Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into something absolutely wild. We're unpacking the exact, highly structured prompt frameworks that are quietly powering a massive, multi-billion-dollar AI empire in 2026. Look, if you've ever felt like pulling your hair out over unpredictable AI coding tools, or if you're kind of worried about falling behind in this crazy tech landscape, stick around. We're going to break down the specific strategies that separate the everyday users from the elite architects. All right, let's kick things off with a number that honestly blew my mind, 60%. Right now, in 2026, 60% of AI-generated code still needs to be manually revised. Crazy, right? And the reason why is pretty simple. Most developers just don't know how to prompt correctly. They're treating these incredibly advanced AI models like, I don't know, a magic 8-ball, shaking it, crossing their fingers, and just hoping it doesn't break production. And when you do that, well, the results are exactly what you'd expect. Inconsistent, buggy, and just super frustrating.
So what's the fix? Well, there's a massive paradigm shift happening right now. On one side, you've got what people call the vibe coding mindset. That's when you treat AI like a basic search engine, just tossing vague requests at it and relying on endless trial and error. But the other side? That is the mindset of the future. It's about treating your prompts like you're programming an API. This is a structured, predictable engineering approach. The big takeaway here is realizing that prompt design isn't just typing words into a chat box. It's a formal, technical skill, and it demands absolute precision.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The AI coding crisis. 2. The billion-dollar empire. 3. Mastering the core frameworks. 4. Codex versus the competition. 5. Securing AI code. And 6. From user to architect. Let's jump straight into Section 1, the AI coding crisis. Wasting tokens and debugging black boxes. The source material does a great job highlighting the very real, very painful costs developers are facing every single day when they ignore structured prompting. It's not just a minor headache. Bad prompts lead directly to inconsistent outputs and pesky bugs, which means you are literally losing hours to manual debugging. On top of that, you're throwing money out the window, wasting anywhere from 3 to 12 cents for every 1,000 API tokens on completely useless iterations. And when you combine that with fragmented knowledge scattered all over the web, you get prompt anxiety. It's a very real career fear and honestly a massive trigger for imposter syndrome. Moving right along to Section 2, the billion-dollar empire, how prompts built a tech behemoth. When you step back and trace the chronological evolution of AI coding, the pace is it's awe-inspiring. Think about it. Everything started just back in 2017 with the introduction of the transformer architecture. A few years later, in 2020, GPT-3 introduced us to the concept of few-shot prompting. By 2022, ChatGPT hit the scene and made conversational and chain-of-thought prompting totally mainstream. Fast forward a blink to 2025, and suddenly the Codex command line interface goes open source and tools like DSPy are automating our workflows. It is wild to see how quickly that timeline brings us to the monumental realities we're facing in 2026. And speaking of those 2026 realities, by March of that year, OpenAI reached a staggering valuation of $852 billion. Let that sink in. That astronomical figure didn't just materialize out of thin air. It was driven directly by massive, widespread developer adoption. We're talking over 4 million developers using these tools every single week, compiled with heavy enterprise usage of systems like Codex. The math here is actually pretty simple. High-quality prompts drive developer productivity, which drives enterprise adoption, which ultimately skyrockets that valuation. Let's dig into the how in Section 3, Mastering the Core Frameworks, the 50 secret templates. So the very first foundational technique we need to talk about is few-shot prompting. The whole idea here is to completely step away from zero-shot guessing, where you just ask a question and blindly hope for the best. Instead, you intentionally provide the AI with specific, high-quality examples of the inputs and the exact outputs you expect before you make your final request. By doing this, you're establishing a reliable, predictable pattern for the AI to follow. It's a total game changer for code generation accuracy. Next up, we have chain of thought, or COT for short. This one is absolutely brilliant for debugging and complex problem solving. By explicitly instructing the AI model to lay out its reasoning and logic step by step before it actually writes the final code, you are forcing it to expose its internal thought process. It literally stops being a mysterious black box. So if there's an error, and there will be, you can see exactly where the AI's logic went off the rails. You can pinpoint exactly where it got confused. Now, we elevate things to a whole new level with the REACT framework. That stands for reasoning and acting. This structure is so cool because it transforms the AI from just a passive text generator into an active, working software agent. What's amazing about React is that it allows the AI to actively use external tools. It can execute a Python script, query a live API, or check a database right in the middle of generating its response. It is literally reasoning about your problem and taking action at the exact same time. And finally, we arrive at the ultimate 2026 secret weapon, DSP automation. Look, manual prompt engineering takes a ton of time, right? Well, DSP is a programmatic framework from 2024 that actually uses language models to automatically evaluate, optimize, and rewrite your prompts at scale. Essentially, you're hiring an AI editor to automatically perfect your AI coding prompts. It's using AI to iterate on the AI. Mind-blowing, right? All right, moving on to Section 4, Codex versus the competition, the 2026 landscape. When we pull up the data comparing the top 3 heavyweights, Codex CLI, Claude Code, and GitHub Copilot, the contrast is honestly stark. GitHub Copilot is still sitting there as a solid standard baseline tool, mostly for broad IDE integration. And Claude Code is definitely leading the pack when it comes to high-complexity logic tasks, about 44% of them. But Codex CLI, it emerges as an absolute powerhouse. Just look at that benchmark right there. GPG 5.3 Codex hit a massive 77.3% on Terminal Bench. When you combine a score like that with its unmatched ecosystem integration and those 4 million weekly users we talked about, it is a truly dominant force. Which brings us to a very serious topic in Section 5, securing AI code, the prompt injection threat. Okay, the data on this next point is actually pretty alarming. When Codex Security scanned 1.2 million commits in early 2026, they uncovered over 10,000 high-severity issues. To put that into perspective, that averages out to 1 critical vulnerability for every 114 commits. Let me be blunt. If you aren't actively baking security into your prompt architecture, you are actively introducing severe, potentially catastrophic vulnerabilities straight into your production code. So, how do we stop this? The source material heavily emphasizes an enterprise defense in-depth strategy. This means you absolutely must embed strict input validation and rigorous output sanitization directly into your automated workflows. It's not optional anymore. You also need to be using sandboxed execution environments, running continuous AI monitoring, and enforcing strict governance using repository-embedded agents.md files to lock down how your AI behaves. Taking the time to set up these defensive layers, honestly, it's non-negotiable for enterprise workflows. Finally, let's look at the big picture in Section 6, from user to architect, future-proofing your career. Look, there is a very real industry-wide fear of job obsolescence out there right now. People are worried. But the sources map out a very clear, actionable career ladder to navigate this transition. Step 1 is the prompt user. This is basic trial and error, and honestly, it's a dead end. Step 2 is the prompt engineer, which is where you start applying the structured frameworks we just went over. Step 3 is the AI workflow designer, where you're actually integrating complex multi-agent systems. And at the very top, Step 4 is the prompt architect. This is where you're building massive, secure enterprise automation. The crucial takeaway here is that mastering these techniques literally elevates your market value, step by step by step. Because the reality is, by 2028, knowing how to do this will just be table stakes. It's going to be expected of absolutely everyone. So I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Will you be the one manually writing the code, or will you be the architect designing the automated AI workforce? The frameworks are out there, and as we've seen, the tools are incredibly powerful. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly encourage you to start experimenting with these structured frameworks in your own projects today. Catch you next time.